Coach. Thanks for joining me today on this SimpleCoach interview. Appreciate it. I realize the tech gods were not kind to you today, but I do appreciate you working through and joining me. It's great to be talking to somebody from a school where there is a Mount Union grad who is a head coach there for the football team. Mike Sirianni, I think, Nick's brother. Yeah.
Yes.
So, but anyhow, thank you.
No, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Okay, so this is going to be fun because this is like clean slate here. You just got the job in April, I think, is what I saw, correct?
Yeah, the end of April.
Yeah,
yep.
end of April. So let's just start out with the basics. Can you just talk about your soccer journey? How did you end up at Washington and Jefferson?
Sure. I mean, I've been around the game since I was a kid. My dad was a coach. I played all the way up through high school, played through college. I went to Southern Vermont College, which unfortunately doesn't exist anymore. It's one of the many schools that have closed over the last 5 years. Played my 4 years, didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, so I just stayed and was basically a student assistant as a fifth-year student. And then the head coach left, and we kind of joked about, hey, wouldn't it be funny if I took over? And the athletic director was like, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do that. And didn't have a clue what I was doing, and but absolutely fell in love with it. Realized pretty quickly after 2 seasons that I did not have the basis that I needed to be successful. So jumped on. I was at Juniata College. Yeah. I mean, I knew the game, but all the other things that go into running a program have nothing to do with the sport.
Yeah. You almost need to be like a businessman on the side, like in a weird way. You have to learn how to run a business because that's sort of what you're doing. But anyhow, sorry to interrupt.
It's, from creating a schedule to recruiting to organizing a budget, understanding what goes into a budget, because when you're an athlete, all you know is that there's uniforms and we get to games, and that's pretty much it. But so I realized I didn't know any of that. So I went down. I got an opportunity to jump on at Juniata College, where I was the assistant for the men for 2 years for both, and then for the men and the women for a year before taking over the men's program. I was there for 13 seasons. And then right in the height of the pandemic, my wife and I kind of said, hey, let's take an adventure, and got an opportunity to jump on with the women up at Northland College up in Ashland, Wisconsin. I was there for 3 seasons. And then we realized that it's a long way from family, and a 6-month winter was not something we were prepared for the rest of our lives. So started looking to come back east. And when I saw that this job opened up, I was familiar with Washington and Jefferson already as a school from being in Pennsylvania. But just with the history of the program and everything, I was like, this is really where we want to be. Plus, we have family in the area, so it made sense. And I was fortunate enough that they gave me the opportunity. So, I'm very, very happy to be here, getting settled in. It's been, moving halfway across the country in a pandemic isn't fun. It's not much more fun when you do it again 3 years later. But it's been a really good settling in over the last couple months here.
No, very cool. Hey, let me ask you something. You started out on the men's side, and then you jumped to the women's side. Was there a reason for that? Other than just like opportunity, or was it like there was an interest on the women's side that you wanted to explore?
Yeah, it was kind of just an interest. I coached a U19 club team on the girls' side when I started out coaching. I was also, when I was at Juniata, I was also a track and field coach, one of the assistants for I think 9 years, and most of my athletes were female. So I kind of had they're athletes. Athletes are athletes, and I just kind of. I wanted a new opportunity in a new place, and this was the opportunity that was the opportunity that showed up. And I really, really enjoyed the change. And kind of when I was looking to come back, I was like, I think I'm just going to try to stay on the women's side if I can. For whatever reason, I just feel like it's fit pretty well with me.
Yeah. That always just makes me curious when you jump from, you're starting in one spot and then you jump to another, and then especially on the men's to women's games, which to me they're the same but very different.
Absolutely.
And so anyhow, that was more of a curiosity for me. I've asked this before of new coaches as well, because I mean, was there a purpose to your hiring? And I don't mean that you didn't deserve the job or anything, but did they tell you, look, you're going to get the job, but we expect you, in a lot of cases, right, we want you to turn a program around. W&J has had a track record of success, so I don't necessarily think that was the reason, but was there anything like that as part of your hiring?
I know one of the things that we talked about a lot was that, they had a coach here that had a lot of success, and then 5 years ago moved on. And then, so he had recruited a class, and then a new coach came in and he was recruiting a class, and then he left after a year, and there was a new coach, and then, the pandemic, and they were basically just, their big thing was they wanted some stability. They wanted someone to come in that was going to kind of, point. And that's what I knew that we were looking for as well. I have two young kids, and I don't want to be moving around a ton if I don't have to be while they're during their school years. So I think it was a good fit.
Yeah. Well, that's fair, because I think that's, there's a lot of places that could be have great programs if they could find the right coach. And oftentimes they do, but it's interim. And that's and they do it for a year, they do it for 2 years, and then they move on. And so you can't. I always say a lot of what you end up doing, a lot of those great programs build up some momentum and learn to build on that, keep building on that momentum. Well, when you constantly change over the coaching staff, it doesn't help. Right?
No, it makes it difficult.
Yeah. All right. So the other question I like to ask is, new coach, new program. You're new to the program. I mean, could you talk about anything that you've done that is new to W&J, to the women's program? Like, hey, this is my stamp. Now this is the start of something, and I'm not saying you'd change it all up, but if there's any things that you brought to W&J that would be considered new to a player?
Without knowing all the details of what they were doing with the previous coaching staff, not exactly. I know that a lot of the things that I have been doing this summer have been received pretty well, from having basically biweekly updates, talking to every player as well, the best I can. We have a 30-person roster. Sometimes it's hard to track people down, but really taking the time to have the phone conversations, the Zoom conversations, because I wasn't even on campus before they left for the summer.
Yeah.
They were part of my interview day, and then I was on campus on a way through, going through on for Memorial Day recruiting, and I stopped here for 2 days, and I think every one of them walked through the door of the office but I honestly, they're walking through, and I'm like, I don't even tell me your name. I'm not even going to remember it. You're going to be here for 20 minutes, and I'm going to meet 30 people. So, just taking the entire summer to really get to know them as people, because that's the biggest thing. If we're going to have success, they have to trust me. I need to earn that trust, and I can't do that just because on day one they show up and I say, all right, get on the line, let's go. So really trying to do that, and trying to work out. I think that I have a different idea about team leadership compared to what the previous coaching staff had. Not that one is right and one is wrong. I just have a different view. So trying to work through some of those details, taking over for a coach that was here for a couple of years. And again, I believe in what I'm doing, and I think that they're starting to really get a good idea about my viewpoints towards different things. Things that they were really, really focused on, I'm not necessarily quite as focused on, and I think the way that I've described some things kind of had been a little bit of an eye opener. It's a different way of doing it. So,
that's interesting. Like, because one of the questions I was going to ask, like, I thought you may have sort of had time to work with the team, but it's clearly not. So let me ask, how much video are you watching?
All of it. I think I've watched every game. I've broken down every game. I got access to all the game footage from last year, and I've been going down and kind of watching things and writing down things I like and taking notes and writing down things I didn't like and kind of addressing those with players as I've talked to them. A lot of them are more of like just in the way that we do things and some of the small details that I think we can work on. But I've watched a ton of video on the games from last year and all the incoming players too. So.
What's your impression so far? Like, just again, I totally get it's just video, right? And so they're playing the way they're playing, and there's no input from you. But what's your impression so far of the players on the team, those who will be coming back to in the fall, and sort of that? Like, are you, hey, that we got some, man, if I could do this, that, and the other, this team's going to be outrageous? Or is it like, oh, we got a lot of work to do?
No, I think we really only graduated one starter from last year, and I was impressed with the play on the field. I think they were a little more conservative than what I planned to be in the way that I want to play. And I think there are some players on the team that their positions may change based on what I have seen in video and what I saw as some tendencies that I kind of might want to use in a different direction. So I think that we can improve upon the finish from last year. And I'm excited. I'm really excited. I think that we have an opportunity that we can kind of take a decent step forward just in year one, even with me not having worked with the team before and, kind of finishing out the recruiting. I didn't even really get to recruit anybody. It was just kind of closing the door and finishing all. It's an odd time to be taking over, but it was. I think it's gonna be really good, and I'm looking forward to getting him back on campus here in a couple weeks.
Did you? I can't believe you just said that. Like, getting back on campus in a couple weeks, because it's like, what? Like, it's like, holy mackerel! It's time has flown when you're having fun. Talk to me. Oh, let me, before I ask that one, the recruiting class that's coming in, that has nothing. I don't know, in a bad way. This has nothing. It has nothing to do with you. Is that fair to say?
There were 4 of them that were already committed to come here when I got the position, and that was kind of my first phone call was to the 4 of them to make sure that they were still coming here. And then there was a few that were already kind of in the hopper that there were a lot that were in the hopper, but there were 4 that I was able to kind of help close the door on and say, this is still a place that you want to be. And it's an exciting time to be here, and kind of try to talk up my vision of what I want to see. And they bought into that. So we were able to add four other players to the class, which was nice. Again, just doing it straight off of some video that I saw, but it is where we are. So I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just like, man, you're thrown into the hopper, and like, oh my gosh, what are you going to do? Right. Like, and just try to sort out. I'm sure you got stuff popping up every day where it's like, oh, I didn't deal with that. Like, now I got to figure out how to deal with it. Right. Yes.
No. Did you watch? Were you able to watch some of the players in the recruiting class? Is it video? Just video. And I've watched video on every one of them. Some I was able to watch before I saw them play, or before I spoke to them. Others, it was kind of, let's have the conversation. Yeah, why don't you send me over some video so I can take a look, just to give them a better idea of where I thought they sat. But actually, it was funny because at that point when I was getting the recruit video, I did not have access to the video for the team yet. So I was just kind of like, well, having done this for 22 years and watched college soccer for 22 years, I think it's going to work out. So we'll put it all together. And the biggest thing for me, I've told all of them, be fit and have a positive attitude. And if you do that, we can do some pretty good stuff. So. Yeah. Do you have a sense as to whether this group, do you expect some of the players to contribute? Like, do you think you have some talent coming in that you're like, oh, they can make waves? Yeah,
I do. Again, it's hard not having seen them play before, but I think that, or seeing the current team play before, but I do believe that, from what I've seen, again, knowing the level, I think there's some players in this class that are going to come in, and Whether they turn heads right away or not, I think they're definitely the type of players that you could build a nice core around and continue to take steps forward. So,
yeah. I think that's the important thing, right? Like,
yeah.
do they
If you don't have a
contribute
core,
tomorrow or do they contribute in a month, right? You need
yeah,
both, right?
yeah,
I don't know. That's sort of my impression. Like, it's just a matter of where you're placing them in the time lineup, right? Like, oh, I think you've got to do some work, and you're gonna in 6 months you'll be ready, and we just need to put you there, right? And so,
and I think some of it's from the skill point, but others it's there's been some leadership things when you talk to them. There's some leadership things that I think they match up with what I'm going to be looking for leadership. Yeah. So having a core that can kind of come in and be part of my first classes will be nice.
Yeah. All right. So you've mentioned this a few times, so I'm going to assume it's a big deal for you. You talked about leadership, and so could you talk about your vision of leadership in your program, and then I would just say more broadly, or if you prefer, just to talk about sort of team culture and sort of what you like to create, the atmosphere you like to create for your players.
It's actually something that I've focused on a lot in the last probably 5-6 years. I was at Juniata for a long time, and we had a conversation in one off season where I asked the team. We had coming off a disappointing year. We're starting up the spring practices and brought all the returners together. I was like, all right, guys, talk to me about what is your vision? Like, what do you see? What is the culture of this team in your words? And it was the most eye-opening and probably heartbreaking thing I had ever heard when they were like, Coach, there isn't one. It's not positive. It's not negative. Yeah, there isn't one. It's just blah. We get here and we play together. We love each other, but that's just what it is. So I've really spent a lot of time working on that and trying to find different ways to help them connect to the program and not just to the team, because obviously, two very different things. The team changes every year, but the program is the program. And so we've spent a lot of time trying to work on that and how do you choose your leaders and kind of one of the major questions that I was asked through the interview process from the players was, what is my view on, captains? How does that work? It seemed to be a very, very important thing to them. And I tried to explain, it's more than just going out for a coin flip. It's a responsibility. It's a job. You have to be that step in between, the players and me to be able to be a sounding board for them and filter things up and filter things down. And it's more than just everybody getting in a room and saying, these are my 3 friends and I want them to be captains now. So we've had a lot of conversations. I actually just sent out another email to the team this morning and working towards, how do I organize some of those leadership ideas and trainings and stuff when we get back for preseason. So I've tried to place a lot more focus on it in the last couple of seasons.
Yeah. Do you have like a leadership council, or do you just do the captains as sort of that's your council?
Yeah, I've kind of done it more as the captains have been the council, but part of that is a conversation with them, like who are the people that they lean on? Because even a leader needs to lean on somebody, and so who are the people that you lean on? And sometimes we'll bring them into a meeting too, and like what are your thoughts on this? I mean, these guys, they're the ones that are the face, but what are your thoughts to go along with it? I think sometimes it allows for a little bit more honesty. When you have them in small groups like that, where they can, you're my friend and that's great. We really need this from you. And it's one thing when it comes from a coach, but when it comes from their peer, it tends to make a little bit more of an impact.
Yeah, that's the interesting. I was a terrible captain. I was selfish and I wasn't that guy, but there was not, this was the early 80s, and I don't think the whole notion of culture and all those different things really had taken off. It was, you were just an athlete, and you showed up, and you left, and you showed up, and you left. But I do think it's a big deal, and I do think that they end up driving. I've put in a lot of thought in how do you create the culture, or do the players create the culture? You know what I mean? Like, you can sort of maybe put the 4 walls. Say culture fits within this 4 walls. and then it's the players who paint it and put all the pictures and do all that stuff. And I think the captains, I think they drive it. They validate it. Let's just say, like, yep, this is the room this is the culture that we want, and this is what we're going to stick with. And I do think that it's a big deal. I think it's a lot bigger deal than it ever was in my day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right. So, is it too early to ask you about the president's athletic conference?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Like, you're like trying to watch video of your own team just to figure out how they play. And I'm asking you about the conference. Do you have any impressions so far, or that's
I do.
like
I know I was on the men's side when I was at Juniata, but we played a lot of programs from the President's Conference, and our women's program at Juniata did the same. So I have been following the program or the conference for a long time, and there are some super competitive teams, and there's some teams that are kind of on the come up at this point. So we're trying to take those steps. I mean, we had like I said, a 6th place finish last year. The top 6 teams make the conference. Our goal is we want to be hosting a playoff game at the very least. Be hosting a playoff game. So, and then kind of continue moving back up from there. We should be, in my opinion, maybe overconfident. We should be, a top 3, top 4 program every single year, fighting for a championship, and that's what we're looking to get back to.
Yeah, I will say, just looking at your schedule, and I get this has nothing, not that it has nothing to do with you, but it has nothing to do with you because you weren't around. But like, I always look at the first thing I do is I just look at the losses and ties to see scores, and I'm looking at all this stuff, and it's like you're close outside of. Like, no, outside of Grove City, where you lost by 2, every game. Oh, it's Franciscan. I'm sorry. Every game is a one. Is the draw or is a 1-goal loss. That to me is that flip. Okay, well, can you flip those? Can you get point? The losses to get a point. Can you take the losses and make it a win? Or the ties and make it a win, right? You just flip that, and then sort of where do you stand? And you're like, wow, you're in really great shape.
Yeah, 5, 6, and 6 last year. I mean, 6 goals in one direction, and you're 11 and 6.
Yeah,
6
that's
goals
what I mean.
the other direction, you're 5 and 12. So
you're fine. Yeah. Well, it's I'm the. I don't have a glass half full. I have the glass is always full for me. So, I'm like, I look at it and they're like, oh, you're going to flip those. But anyhow, sorry, I got off on a tangent. I was just curious, like, hey, you're just getting in and you're just trying to understand your team. And here I am asking about your comments.
No, I thought about it a lot. It's, make a plan for every game.
Yeah. All right, just do you have a sense as to where, like, sort of, if what's sort of like your recruiting footprint going to be, or what is? I'm not saying W&J's footprint. I'm saying, like, what are your aspirations? If you could snap your fingers and say, hey, I want to recruit nationally, or I want to just recruit. I want to get the best players in Pennsylvania or Ohio, whatever the case may be. Do you have a sense of that yet, or knowing that you're? Like, I feel bad. I'm asking you that, but hey, put you on the spot.
I mean, so right now when you look at it, I don't know the exact percentage, but if I was to throw it off the top of my head, 90% of the roster probably lives within an hour and a half of campus anyway. So trying to make sure that we are at least in the conversation for the kids that can help us win, that are in the Pittsburgh area in general, the the western just part of the state, because some of our better players are from this area. But having recruited a little bit more nationally when I was at Juniata, and having to recruit completely nationally when I was at Northland, trying to use some of those connections that I've had to maybe see, okay, well, can I pull in the right kind of a fit kid that wants to be in this type of an environment that can help us? I mean, we're a lot more accessible than the last couple of schools that I have been at. Just in terms of how do you get there. So I think that would be super helpful.
I mean, you guys, Washington College. Sorry, I'm just looking up. I'm trying to get a good sense of the geography. This is the reason why I asked that question is, and I don't know. I can't say like what the rationale or what the reasoning is for. Yeah, you're right by Pittsburgh. I mean, you got so much stuff going on. You're in a great spot. My sense these days is that I'll just say when I started, right, because that's my sociology of me. Like when I was playing, like your schools recruited where they were getting the kids at the time, right? They just sort of said we're getting a ton of kids from New Jersey. You know, the Ohio schools were recruiting a lot in New Jersey, and the kids were coming. So, right. So they kept doing that until that changed, and then they're all Ohio now for the most part. But I think kids now, just because of the competitive landscape, they'll go. Like if you want them, I don't think geography is as big of a deal as it used to be for a lot of kids. Like they want to play, and they're gonna go. So that's why I'm curious about sort of, you know, are you in a position to expand it nationally? I see you got a kid from Florida and whatnot, but that's the only reason why I asked that, because I do think, like I said, kids will come. I think kids are really interested in playing soccer, and if they buy into your school, I don't think it matters where they're from, right? Like I think they make it happen.
Yeah, I think using the connections that we can. I don't want there to be any kids really in the southwestern part of the state here that don't know who we are or who I am. Because I think that's where our bread and butter is. Right, but I really do want to try to, and even this upcoming recruiting class, the 24s, where trying to branch out a little bit, find people that are looking for what we have that we think could definitely come away from home and help us win here and help elevate us a little bit. I feel like everybody, I've noticed really, I just got back from working at camp down at Cal U, and it's amazing to me. Everybody in Pittsburgh soccer knows everybody else in Pittsburgh soccer. Everybody in this part of the state knows everybody, and I'm the new guy. So I've got to get on that level and trying to make those connections, but also, like I said, using some of the connections that I have outside of the area. I grew up in New England, and I spent some time in the upper Midwest trying to pull on some of those people to be like, hey, come on, like you have a kid that want to get away from home. We offer a lot here, beautiful facilities and stuff. So, and see if we can kind of, I don't know, sneak some people in.
No, I get that.
Get a leg
like
up.
I think that's like I said, I think geography is not as big of a deal as it used to be. And I think kids are willing to go. I think whatever the reason is, right or wrong, I think kids are like, I'm going to play college. And if they find a place that they like, and they're going, right? And it's because it ticks those boxes. But all right, so this is the other one, which I'm sure you can't even count them all, but like, I mean, do you feel like you're dealing, like, what are the challenges? Is it your newness that you think that going into the fall in a couple of weeks that do you think that's your biggest challenge? Or, I mean, you're obviously doing everything you can to make sure that you run right into it, but are there things that you think are an obstacle to you right now as you're heading into the fall? Not an obstacle, but maybe more of a concern for you?
Concern? No, I'm not concerned about anything. I think the big thing for me is having been in athletics at higher ed since I was, basically 17 years old, coming in as a freshman and basically never leaving it. Every place has a different way of doing things, and being new here, coming into a fall season where we've got all these sports going at the same time, and it's a lot of the logistical pieces that, how do the class schedules work here, which I'm starting to kind of get a little bit more knowledge about. And, classes in general, they start here 2 weeks earlier than what I was used to at my last school. So we started the Wednesday after Labor Day at my previous institution. Wow. And then here we start August 23rd. So, it's how does our preseason is 5 days long. Once we get here, that's it. And even during that, there's orientation that the freshmen and transfers will all be pulled off to. So it's logistical things. That's it. Ian McDonald, the men's coach, has been fantastic working with me. We kind of help him. He's been here. He's been doing it here for 33 years. So, he's been trying to give me a lot of ideas and pointers on how things work here. How things have changed and how things work now, and helping me kind of make sure that I can hit the ground running and I'm not worried about changing things last minute. I'm a pretty big scheduler. My wife wouldn't agree, but I'm a pretty big scheduler, and I want to make sure that things go smooth for the athletes. I can be adaptable. I think we have to as coaches in college, but I want the athletes. They need to be adaptable, but I want it to be predictable.
Yeah. You have your own field, right? Like you have your own soccer stadium, correct?
Soccer and lacrosse, yeah.
Yeah, soccer and lacrosse. Well, yeah. All right, so that makes it easier, right? Because you're not one field that all these teams are trying to get.
And then attached to that, we actually our baseball stadium is actually attached to it, and we have a movable fence in the outfield, so we have extra space to use. If we need it. It's a beautiful facility up there. Very lucky to have it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at Brooks Park? No, Ross Memorial Park.
Yeah, Ross Memorial.
Yeah.
And Alexander
How
Stadium,
far is that from you guys?
It's about I would say about 8-9 minute drive.
Yeah.
I guess, but you're going through the city of Washington, so it's probably only a mile and a half, 2 miles.
Yeah.
It's really not that far. Easy little trip down the road from campus, but
I see that. That's beautiful. Turf. Yeah.
It's a massive turf space.
Yeah. I just I geek out over this stuff, it's another one. I'm a Mount Union grad, so I've said this before, and I look at what you guys have, like soccer and lacrosse wise, and I keep saying, like, they're going to hate me or they're going to listen to me, one or the other. Is like, why doesn't Mount Union have a similar field set up to you guys? And a lot of schools, right? Like, just the effort that's going into the soccer and lacrosse programs to give their own identity and all that kind of stuff. Anyhow, that's my soapbox. Sorry. All right, so I just want to shift back a little bit. My last question, at least for now, are ramblings. But what your perfect season for this fall? What does it look like? Is it hosting?
Yeah, I mean, going from a sixth place finish, having basically a quarterfinal play-in game on the road. Hosting a playoff game, I think, would be a good step forward for us in this first year, considering the roster is very similar to last year as far as the starters returning, and then a class of people that we haven't really seen play yet. I think that would make me feel pretty good about what we've done. But and then the whole time making sure we have a healthy class for the next year as my first real class that I'm bringing in. Those would be the two big goals for me for this year.
All right, that wasn't the last question. Are you already started your recruiting for Washington Jefferson?
Well,
or have you been anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, I came out. So I was still living. I got the job at the end of April, and we didn't move here until the second weekend in June. So I was kind of going back and forth, and that was a lot. But I got right into it. I got into me. And the funny thing is, even when I was getting into it, I already felt like I was behind. The timetable for women's recruiting in soccer is just it is so advanced. It's wild. The amount of 24s that are already off the board is, and not even just at big schools, but there's a lot of smaller schools. Us included. I have a commit for next year already, which I was shocked. I've never experienced anything like this before. But we are definitely well into that, and into our 2025s as well. Trying to make those, just start the conversation. I can't really give them an answer as to where they fit yet, because I don't know what the next class looks like. But if they're interested, let's have a conversation at the very least.
Oh, very good. Well, it sounds like you're doing nothing and you're not busy at all.
Yeah, so much downtime. So much.
Yeah,
downtime.
so much. Like, what do you guys do? You kick back, you talk soccer all day.
Yep.
Anyhow, Coach, this was fantastic. Really do appreciate it. I appreciate the time. I wish you all the best. Like, this was this. I sort of, again, just sort of what we talked. Like, you got your head straight about what you want to do and what you want to accomplish. So I will be cheering on from afar and wish you and your ladies the best. Going forward. So
I really appreciate it. I thanks for having me on. Like I said, I've watched a lot of the interviews in the past, and I love what you're doing. And just like I said, the extra eyeballs on Division III soccer it'll never hurt us. So yeah. I appreciate what you do.
Thank you very much. All right, Coach.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. One of those tools and a great starting point is to check out Discover College Soccer Study Table. Now, I've interviewed Matt Baer, who's the founder of Discover College Soccer, before. Really great guy. And you've probably seen his podcast. I've referred to it and recommend anybody to go to check out his interviews with coaches at all levels. That is specifically designed to talk about the recruiting process and the different college programs. He's not talking about them himself, he's letting the coaches speak. So with all of that information that he's gathered, he's put together this study table that is a program to help you with your recruiting process that's complete with video course on the recruiting process from start to finish. He has these that are updated spreadsheets that are updated monthly, with contact information and details about every program in the country. That alone is worth its weight in salt. He has a bunch of other resources, email templates, checklists to help you guide you through your own process. Now, the best part is, whereas you can pay thousands of dollars to some of these recruiting services, you can get a lifetime subscription to the study table for less than one night in a tournament hotel. The best part of it is that Matt has his own soccer experience. He's a former college player and college coach. He's talked to over 150 coaches in just the last year, and he has some great insights and has created something that I think is probably very, very useful to a lot of you, and best of all, you get to save time and save money. Now look, I don't recommend people that I don't know or I haven't come to know. I've talked to Matt, as I mentioned, on a number of occasions, and he's probably has the most insightful and, I'll just say, thorough understandings of the recruiting process. Not because he's made it up, but because he's asked coaches across the college game. And he's taken all of that, figured out what the best recommendations from all of those discussions that he had, and put that together into the study table. So if you don't want to spend thousands on recruiting, on a recruiting service, and you have the mind to do it yourself, the Discover College Soccer Study Table is for you. So in the description, you can find a link that will get you 20% off on a lifetime subscription. Or if you go to discovercollegesoccer.com, click on the study table to register and use the discount code SIMPLE, you get to save 20% on your subscription. So with that, good luck.